Hello everyone, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. It is time for your Wednesday interview, and today I am very excited to say that I am being joined by the team from OnChainMonkey. I've got Danny and Amanda in the house, two of the co-founders of OnChainMonkey, to really talk all things OCM Dimensions and Ordinals, but we do get into some broader OnChainMonkey conversation as well. I had put out on Twitter that I was interviewing this team and wanted y'all's questions, so I tried to include as many of your questions as possible, and the team really delivered. I mean, this is one of the smartest teams in the space. I think anyone can agree with that. Certainly after you listen to this, you can make up your own mind. But they have been doing so much to push the Ordinals space forward and have a very specific lane that they as a team are looking to occupy. And so far, they've done it exceptionally well. Before we do dive into this episode, one quick administrative note. We have set a new date for the Los Angeles Overpriced Happy Hour event that had to be rescheduled. It will now be on July 25th. And because Betty is still in Australia, our new guests are, drumroll please, the team from Cool Cats, CEO Stephen Teglis and Klon, the artist. Klon was actually on the podcast in very, very, very early days, but has not been back on since then. I'm really looking forward to talking to the Cool Cats team about everything that's happened. We've never really had to sit down together to understand what they feel like went wrong with a project that looked like it was slated to be a top 1 or 2. And then also to really talk about what the future looks like and push them on where they are now and the direction they're taking things now. So I know that Cool Cats still has an awesome community. Y'all are officially invited to the Overpriced Happy Hour event on July 25th at Danvers Gallery in Los Angeles. You can go to opjtour.com now to reserve your seats. Deadfellas holders, y'all are still invited to come. We still love you. We love Betty. So please come and hang out with us. And of course, OPJ holders are invited and Nouns Builders holders are invited. Our Nouns Builder community is still one of our sponsors. Thank you all so much. And of course, thank you to our other Overpriced Happy Hour sponsors, which is OpenSea and Web3 Cents. And speaking of sponsors, we do need to hear a word from our lovely sponsors before we get on with this interview with Danny and Amanda from OnChainMonkeys. Y'all know the phrase, not your keys, not your crypto. Well, in a world where too many people have had to learn that the hard way, Overpriced JPEGs is proud to partner with Ledger, the world leader in critical digital asset security. Ledger's Nano S Plus and Nano X hardware wallets, paired with the Ledger Live app, Ledger's own software for setting up your Nano device and managing your crypto assets, is the easiest way to start your crypto journey while maintaining full control of your digital assets. You can use all your favorite dApps with Ledger Live, accessing 15 plus Web3 apps, including 1inch, Paraswap, Lido, and Zerion. So you can not only manage, but also grow your portfolio. And Ledger Live is available on mobile and desktop. Securing digital assets shouldn't be complicated. Ledger is as easy as it gets. Uncompromising security, effortless connectivity, full transparency, Ledger is your one-stop shop to trade and track crypto, grow your assets, and manage NFTs. Secure your future with Ledger. Visit shop.ledger.com today or check out the link in the show notes. I am so excited to announce that this year, Overpriced JPEGs has partnered with OpenSea, the world's leading NFT marketplace, built for everyone, creators, collectors, noobs, and experts alike. I'm an OpenSea user because they have the best selection of NFTs and a truly inclusive view of the ecosystem, supporting 8 chains and 8 global languages. I trust the systems they've put in place to keep the space safe, like copyright protection, malicious URL detection and removal, robust verification, and more. It's why they are the place to buy, sell, and create NFTs. That's right. You know OpenSea, you use OpenSea, but did you know that OpenSea now has drops? New exclusive projects launch every week from top projects and creators, and you can check them out now using the link in the show notes. They also recently introduced self-serve drops, which is in beta, and allows creators to launch their projects right on OpenSea. This drops product gives creators access to tools like rich storytelling drop pages, multi-chain support, and drop mechanic customization. The full launch for self-serve drops is coming this spring. So check out the upcoming drops on OpenSea right now using the link in the show notes and own what moves you. You'll also be supporting the show in the process. Danny Yang, Amanda Terry, welcome to Overpriced JPEGs.
Great to be on. Thanks for having us.
Long overdue. You and I have been talking about this, Amanda, for so long now. And in some ways, I'm actually glad that for whatever reason, it kept not working out, because this feels like a really awesome moment to have your team on and to be talking to the two of you. And folks who listen to the show know I'm very intrigued by Ordinals. I think for a little while there, I didn't fully, quote unquote, get it from like a gut level of like, why is this so cool? And I now have turned the corner and I'm like, oh, I think this is really cool. So I want to start just with ordinals broadly, because you're both obviously huge advocates of it, and OnChainMonkeys is pushing the ordinal space forward in a whole bunch of ways that we're going to get into. Danny, you had a tweet, and I want to read parts of it here. You said, there's something funny about the early Bitcoin ordinals market today. Many on the outside looking in only see an assortment of low-quality NFTs. And you move on a little bit later. They fail to grasp the technological strides being made on top of Bitcoin or the massive future potential that ordinals possesses. Many people inside ordinals are excited by these same, quote, low-quality NFTs. However, they also don't understand the new technology or know how to judge an ordinal on several significant dimensions. So I have a two-part question here. One, would love to have y'all just articulate what you think the significance of ordinals is. And Danny, I know you've been in the Bitcoin space for a long time. Amanda, I'm not sure exactly when you started in on everything. And then the part two of that question is, what are these significant dimensions upon which people should be evaluating ordinals that you think a whole cohort of people inside and outside the ordinal ecosystem are missing?
Yeah, great questions. And this is actually probably a topic for just those two questions.
A whole podcast in and of itself.
Yeah. So, well, first, what is ordinals? What I think many people have that initial question, and why it's important. To understand ordinals, you actually have to understand Bitcoin. Bitcoin is very significant for the world as a decentralized peer-to-peer, money and store of value. And that has, it's the biggest crypto, like the blockchain with the most, market cap, most value is Bitcoin, and also the most recognized, cryptocurrency. So, Bitcoin is very important to the world overall. And now you have ordinals, which is a protocol where you can say you have NFTs or digital artifacts or digital assets that can be created on top of Bitcoin. And up till now, the primary value of Bitcoin, the protocol, is the fungible token Bitcoin. You couldn't easily create or have many people who want to use it for other digital assets. So if you look at Ethereum, Ethereum's boom was basically for ERC20 and then ERC721. So these are the fungible and non-fungible token standards on top of Ethereum. That's what makes Ethereum so popular by users and developers. So you didn't have that for Bitcoin. Even though Bitcoin has been so successful as a fungible token for Bitcoin, that ecosystem for other things has not really grown, and for various reasons. But now with ordinals, because of this simple protocol, it is starting to happen, and it will happen. And you'll see basically what you saw in Ethereum, what you saw in Solana, these other chains where you have both fungible and non-fungible, or other digital assets besides the native token. That will have a big part of even the use and growth of the native token. So
I want to ask about that growth piece. If ordinals, quote unquote, takes off, and I think maybe that was language you used at one point, but maybe I'm ascribing that to you. I'm curious what you think that looks like. Is it Nike coming on and doing ordinals? Is it like a brand thing? Is it an art thing? Is it mainstream art collectors buying things on ordinals? Like, paint that future picture of the best success case of ordinals in your view.
Yeah, so it's actually all of those, but it's a different, I guess, flavor of all of those. It's different. So Bitcoin ordinals is different from Ethereum NFTs. They are all NFTs. So one big difference is the on-chain aspect of it, or the cost, you could say, of it. So to create an ordinal in the long run, not right now, but in the long run, it's going to be inherently more expensive than a Ethereum NFT. And that is actually a feature as opposed to a disadvantage, because it's where you actually want to create things of value. You have to be thoughtful before you spend money to build something there. It's like, so I guess if you want to analogize to like art or something, like, a sculptor using marble to create something, right? The marble is not cheap, right? So, a sculptor will train to become a proficient, sculptor before they, buy their high quality material to create their art. So Bitcoin is like that, for art or for other use cases. You really have to know or have a good reason to do something with it. And so that's kind of a bar or a quality bar for what is on Bitcoin. But because Bitcoin is such a recognizable and the biggest chain, the biggest, so going back to like brands, the biggest brands or the highest value brands, they probably want to be on Bitcoin as opposed to other chains when they want to show off something.
And do you think that's from a just collectibles perspective? Because I think about Nike, what they're doing with .swoosh, they're trying to do like bigger collection sizes, get more people under the tent. That's probably never going to be an ordinal thing. You're thinking about, I'm assuming ordinals, or let me say this, the way I think about ordinals is really as store of value art and collectibles, less all these other potential uses and that we maybe see on Ethereum.
That might be kind of the initial starting point, so this is where things like what we did with recursion, like when we launched OCM Dimensions, right? We were showing off recursion. So we inscribed this back in February. People weren't thinking about the power of ordinals, right? So we inscribed OCM Dimensions. It uses a number of different dimensions of the technology or the power of things like, so recursion actually is a big part, right? Like we basically pioneered the use of recursion to create dimensions, this 3D animated interactive art collection, and we showed that's possible with in a very scalable or efficient way on Bitcoin. So I think through recursion, beyond so first what you described is if you didn't have recursion, everything you do costs quite a bit, so you can really only limit yourself to that kind of small or high value collections where you expect, let's say, the collector to pay a lot of dollars for something. But with recursion, you can actually build things that actually can scale to a lot more usage and people. So I think that's where I think future creators and developers, and it's beyond art too, because we see actually even recently, people are using recursion to create games on top of Bitcoin. You basically create applications that many people can use. The ownership model can be different, right? Some things you actually want to own the whole thing, but maybe some things you don't actually need to own the inscription, right? For many people to appreciate it.
So the gaming thing is interesting because I feel like the challenge there is, to your point, it's expensive, right? Like inherently, there's always going to be a cost to interacting on Bitcoin that is not like Ethereum or even really a layer 2 on Ethereum, which is where I feel like a lot of NFT gaming companies are trying to exist, or on these layer 2s. So does that feel like something that can actually take off, or is that a novelty? And part 2 of that is there's also limited, as you, I think, put it, land space on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So
I think it will take off, but there'll be many Bitcoin native type of apps. And some of them are games. I mean, I think art will probably still be the first use case because it's kind of the collector mindset and the high value mindset. It's kind of makes sense first. But back to the dimensions, right? Of like what's kind of powerful. So like when we inscribe dimensions, OCM dimensions, right? Recursion. I mentioned recursion earlier, but part of recursion is actually putting in code that recursion is about. You can reuse code, and code is very powerful. So OCM Dimensions actually inscribed code like 3.js, p5.js. So these are actually libraries that are quite powerful and used by many creators on the Ethereum side of things to make basically art blocks type of art, generative art. Even though Bitcoin has this very expensive digital landscape, you only need to use a little bit of it to create very interesting and valued inscriptions or pieces. This is on our side, but it doesn't have to be limited to art. It could be also applications. So I think people will be exploring a lot of interesting use cases beyond art, and they'll also be on Bitcoin. And during this period, actually fees. So right now fees are relatively low compared to what they will be a year from now. So it's actually a great time to be exploring, to be creating things on Bitcoin. And then the filter, basically the fee filter from the fee market on Bitcoin is going to make it quite expensive. So really then it's people creating more high value use cases, which doesn't have to be limited to art. But I think art seems the most clear to people right now. And so we'll probably see a lot of art. But I think there'll be other types of applications.
Well, part of it is I think art is standing out as the most valuable use case on Ethereum NFTs. And then it makes even more sense to me on Bitcoin. Amanda, I'm curious on your end how you think about these questions of like the broader significance of ordinals and what you're excited about for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we covered some of it, but I mean, Bitcoin has 2.5 times the market cap of Ethereum. It's obviously the most decentralized, most secure L1. We're in at Bitcoin Miami, and one of the themes that keep coming up during the conference was just having the most regulatory clarity as well. And we've seen so much growth in the ecosystem that Ethereum, Polygon, Solana, Tezos have all experienced from NFTs growing on those L1s. And Bitcoin is really the only chain that until February, didn't really have a way to inscribe in an energy efficient way. And so and especially with, as Danny mentioned, with the ability to do recursions now, there's so many different applications. I mean, we're seeing people, creating video games from reusing some of the code from OnChainMonkey. There's a lot of different use cases that we believe will create a lot of value for the Bitcoin ecosystem. And so, we're very bullish on everything that's happening with the Ordinals protocol and, what we're building. And we're so unique as a collection because when we launched, the company came together in May 2021, and Danny literally coded the OnChainMonkeys into existence in September 21. There are 10,000 monkeys. They're called OnChainMonkey because they're obviously all on chain. They were a profile pic collection done in a single Ethereum transaction. So that was a big technical feat. Then when the Ordinals protocol came out, because we were on chain, he was able to inscribe them, all 10,000 onto Bitcoin. So, if you have the OnChainMonkey Genesis Ethereum, you can also get the Ordinal of that OnChainMonkey. And then, the innovation again, when he inscribed, kind of OnChainMonkey Dimensions back in February, and then kind of waiting for some of the protocols and marketplaces and wallets to catch up to even, kind of launch the project a couple weeks ago. So it's been just exciting to see. We really feel like we're, very much at the kind of cutting edge of technology, and it's always exciting to be, right at the forefront of everything that's happening and bringing that whole industry forward. So, like I said, we're very excited about building on Bitcoin. We see huge potential, and I think we have a really great position to be one of the leading companies on Bitcoin digital assets.
I started Stanford Bitcoin Meetup back in 2013, and people didn't really understand Bitcoin then. I was trying to convince them, it's something interesting, and then. I think it's because these things like Bitcoin and Ethereum later are very technical. It's very confusing for new people to get like what's the significance, what's the power of it. And Ordinals is pretty much that too. It's actually it's still in a very technical phase, but the protocol is very simple, and the power that enables is actually on the technical side is actually pretty clear to me. So. How I see it playing out over the next year or a couple of years is that it is going to be a quite significant part of the Bitcoin ecosystem, where digital assets, all sorts of crazy digital assets, are going to be created, non-fungible, fungible, on top of Bitcoin, where Bitcoin is the native token. You have the security models of Bitcoin, so that's going to be actually pretty huge, and it's beyond just these, I guess you could say, like the low quality JPEGs that we mentioned earlier in that tweet. And so that's what people don't quite get yet.
This was something I was going to bring up later, but I think it's relevant to what you're saying now as you talk about the technical feats that are being accomplished here. People who listen to the show regularly might know I'm a fan of on-chain art. I like cyber brokers and Avastars, and certainly love what y'all have done. Do you think people undervalue on-chain works on Ethereum, and do you think that will change over time? And I guess the bigger picture I'm getting at here is how much are technical feats interesting novelties, and how much do they actually drive value or activity?
Yeah, so it will definitely change, but it is a technical thing, right? So Ethereum, the ERC 721 standard, which is the non-fungible token standard on Ethereum, is very it's great that it exists. It was created in a time where people didn't think you could do all this on-chain, digital artifact, on-chain NFT things. So it was created with basically a token URL or a URL pointer. So non-fungible token, the standard on Ethereum, is point to somewhere else where you actually host the thing you care about, which is maybe the image or an image or the video, whatever it is, right? The art, right? It's actually not on Ethereum because the standard doesn't support it natively. They're used to not caring about whether it's on chain or not. But we did see some glimpses of where people, like because it's not on chain, people can, change or lose the NFT. And, and also it's, I think it's coming back to kind of understanding, well, what did you actually buy? What is a significant part of an NFT? With Ordinals, the on-chain versus off-chain has become more clear because Ordinals by design are all on-chain. And so now people are going, well, actually my Ethereum NFT is not on-chain. Actually, I probably like the on-chain NFT more. It's difficult to make on-chain NFTs. So, we've been doing that, for the last couple of years. So we knew how to, do this. It was natural for us. But, new creators are trying to figure that out, also on Bitcoin or Bitcoin Ordinals. But I think long-term, on-chain NFTs make the most sense. They probably hold the most value because they're actually the digital artifact. When you think about fungible tokens like Bitcoin, Ethereum, they're all.
But do you think the market will care? Like, why will the market start caring about that? And I want to separate two things here. I think it's important to have a distinction. There's on-chain NFTs on Ethereum, and does it matter that they're on-chain? Take an Avastars versus a Bored Apes or an OnChainMonkey versus an Azuki, right? Bored Apes, Azuki, those are not on-chain collections. It's just the pointer. And right now, from a user experience, you can't really tell the difference, now.
Well, you can't tell the difference over time. So it's the reason for why do you buy something? Is it actually why do you even care about Bitcoin, right? You can have USD, right? You care about Bitcoin because Bitcoin is on chain, right? It is a decentralized, system of, a token that's self custody. You actually can own it. So that's a difference. It's like, are you okay with USD or are you okay with Bitcoin, right? Why do people want Bitcoin versus USD? USD is actually a lot easier to use. It's widely supported in the US. So stick with USD. So that's kind of difference in on-chain versus off-chain NFTs too.
So let me this distinction, I hear what you're saying. You could argue being pinned to IPFS, it sort of feels distributed, et cetera, et cetera. The market hasn't shown up to this point to care about things being on chain. So I'm curious what the catalyst will be for that to change over time. But I do think there's an important distinction, which I think I want to make sure folks understand, which is right now, as a user, you don't really feel the difference between your Bored Ape or on-chain monkeys, even though I maybe think people should, but it is what it is. However, part of what you're talking about on Bitcoin that's important here is you have these snippets of code basically that you're putting on chain that is allowing you to build in these really efficient ways. And I just want to distinguish between there's a real utility to that is distinct from maybe the psychological difference of something being on chain or off chain on Ethereum right now. I don't know if what I just said there made sense, but I want to make sure people are kind of understanding the difference between those two
I think it's
on chain.
Two different types of NFT markets. So I think people understand NFT markets on Ethereum because it's been going on for 2 years or more actually, but really going on for the last 2 years. And on chain didn't really matter there, so the market didn't care. And on chain really matters on Bitcoin, so that's where the market will care about on-chain. And then when they go back to Ethereum, they'll think, well, maybe I like on-chain more. Or they'll say, well, I just want to, Bitcoin NFTs. So then, and I think there'll be so right now, the people who are trading Bitcoin Ordinals are, for the most part, Ethereum NFT collectors. The Bitcoin market hasn't really gone on board yet because it's an early new technology. And kind of what we're talking about here, most people don't understand, the whole recursion thing. I've talked to many, I've been in Bitcoin for a long time, and you could say I'm a Bitcoin maxi, and I used to talk all Bitcoin, and my friends, some of them, right, they just think that Ordinals is putting monkey JPEGs on Bitcoin, and they're these NFTs. They're not interesting to them. But the power really with recursion is that you can put code onto Bitcoin now. You can develop interesting applications on top of Bitcoin and in efficient ways. That will actually bring a lot of new use cases and new developers and basically, yeah, new use of Bitcoin.
So let's talk about some of these technical feats that are so at the core and at the center of your thesis for all of this, and I agree are understood. We've referenced recursion here a couple of times, but I also want to talk about y'all did an on-chain randomization and reveal. You did like a reveal post mint on ordinals, which was not something that had been done before, or even necessarily something that was thought possible. So let's start with that one. Explain that a little bit, and what is the significance there?
Yeah, so going back to ordinals and Bitcoin, every inscription is immutable, which is actually a great feature. So people who realize, I have an inscription, it's immutable, right? I own it, no one can change it, right? With that understanding, you think, well, it's not possible to have a reveal, because a reveal after you mint something means something has changed, right? And so people didn't think you could do a post-mint reveal, and that's what we did with OCM. So we minted it out. People own, they self-custody their inscription in Ordinal with the OCM Dimension, but it wasn't revealed yet. And that was kind of the amazing thing we did first in showing that was possible. And then we basically, right after it was minted out, the next block, we sent a transaction that would basically trigger the reveal. And that's when everyone, before they would just see a blank screen, you could say, like it almost looks like a bug, but it was a feature because it was a pre-revealed state of the ordinal.
And so where was the art itself? So basically in the next block, you had a block of code, you had a line of code that said essentially like, hey, once X has happened, go and show this Y. Like,
yeah. So
walk me through that for a moment.
It is kind of like, however, so actually, in a future upgrade to ordinals, what you describe is going to be like relatively easy for new creators to do, where they can basically, when they inscribe something, they can reference something in the future in a more like simple way. And in fact, the day we launched on June 15th, last month. And the day we launched, actually, Casey Rodenmore tweeted out saying, now in the future upgrade, we're going to allow this. And then that means you can do basically a kind of reveal on Bitcoin now. But we actually did reveal that day without needing his upgrade, because we figured out another way to do it using basically the simple power that I was talking about earlier of just protocol itself. It actually enables a lot of power. But yeah, I guess it's a very technical explanation then for how we did. But basically, just using Ordinals, the protocol itself, and understanding how Bitcoin works, we were able to do a reveal. Basically June 15th, last month.
And in case folks miss this, one of the things that's different and interesting, and this is what happens when you build something on chain about Bitcoin versus Ethereum, is the true immutability of the ordinal, right? Or of the digital artifact. There's no changing the metadata after the fact. And I got into this a little bit with Leonidas, and I'm somebody who I like having different strokes for different folks. I don't mind metadata being able to change in all cases. I think there's an interesting way of like playing with art in that sense, or having art react to things you do. I also think that there's a time and a place for true immutability, where what you see is what you get. It cannot be changed. It is this moment in time, this moment in history.
So that's something we actually show too. You get the best of both worlds with Bitcoin Ordinals. Not only do you get the immutable aspect, where what you got is immutable, so it also forces creators or any builder to be very thoughtful and build to high standards. Yeah, if you can always change things, not only is it that you can rug someone by just change it in a bad way, but you could also put out products that are poorly executed, knowing that you can perhaps get away with upgrading it later, right? And we see that over and over on Ethereum, where people just launch things and then they just change and it's poor quality, but they know they can update the metadata to improve it over time. So the buyer, it loses on that. On Bitcoin, because it's immutable, if you want to make a name for yourself, you really have to, set your standards high when you create something on Bitcoin, and the cost is going to be high anyway. So that's also the bar in the future. Like, people making things they're paying to make it, so they better do a good job making it.
Let me introduce you to a brand new company that I could not be more excited about, Web3 Sense. A Web3 analytics platform that combines on-chain data with social media insights to give you the deepest, most meaningful intelligence into any NFT community. I have tested other analytics platforms out there, but Web3 Sense has the most comprehensive capabilities I've seen in the NFT ecosystem. They apply sophisticated data science to wallet histories to determine behavioral patterns and help shape predictive analytics. In other words, they can tell you which Twitter accounts are actually the influencers in your space. And they can tell you what resonates most within a community by looking at what other communities token holders are involved in. The number of use cases here is virtually unlimited. So whether you're a trader, creator, institution, brand, agency, I promise Web3 Sense has data that you want to see with the deep and actionable insights that you need to build, analyze, grow, start, whatever you want to do within the NFT space and in terms of building a business and a community. Now, they are still in very early days, so they're eager to connect with the community. So if you're interested in learning more about what Web3 Sense can do for you and your business, and you should be, go and fill out the very short form linked to in the show notes, and someone from their team will reach out with more information and an opportunity for a product demo. Trust me, you won't regret it. So let's talk about the recursion piece. This is where you can reference other snippets of code in code you're writing, so you're not forced to put everything in one transaction and drive up the fees. I think you described it, and maybe this was referencing a couple of different things, recursion being maybe one of the main ones, but as like building using skyscrapers, right? You can make it tall as opposed to just wide and taking up more land. You're able to actually stack on top of each other in some way to maximize the use of the limited land space that exists on Bitcoin.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good analogy. And
it's yours.
Yeah.
Well done.
And really, you can build skyscrapers miles high, even to the moon. Basically, there's no limit because of, it's you can do a lot with code.
So give some of these examples. Maybe talk about reinscription with an example of what it will enable or what it does enable.
Well, I think that the big picture for reinscription, how you think about it, is you're not. I think when I just say the term and people think, oh, you're reinscribing something, you're overwriting the previous inscription, and so that is actually not true at all. You can think of it as each time you inscribe, the cost is the same, as in you're inscribing on this very valuable digital land, right? That we talked about. Like people have to be thoughtful whenever they inscribe. But each inscription is also immutable. So whenever you inscribe, that inscription can never change. It's immutable. Reinscriptions are more inscriptions that are immutable. But it's actually how you think about what is a reinscription. So then it goes back to what we're talking about sats and ordinals. So a reinscription is basically writing a sat with multiple inscriptions. So you can think of every sat, so every Satoshi or ordinal is not just one layer where you can write an inscription. It's actually multi-layers. You can write many inscriptions on a given sat. And then you can think about that as, well, what does that actually mean? One way is just the canvas for a Satoshi or an ordinal is, multi-layered. You can actually make multiple art pieces on a given Satoshi. And that's a kind of simple way to think about it. So, if you're an artist and you want to create maybe a mini collection, then you can do that on a sat with reinscription. And you sell that collection, that mini collection, all at once. And it never gets split up. So, I think that, some artists may want to keep a collection together. They may never want to split it up to sell to different people. So, let's say like these three pieces go together. So then that's reinscribed on one Satoshi. But in terms of like recursion, thinking about programming and code, reinscription, the Satoshi is like a variable, and the reinscription is basically the state of that variable, and you can change the state. So that's very powerful for programs, for applications on top of Bitcoin, especially for dynamic applications. So that's going to be a big use case for that, for Ordinals in the future.
Y'all inscribed, I believe it was SAT-78, which comes from a Bitcoin, like one of the first Bitcoin ever traded. It was owned, it's like a special Bitcoin that SAT-78 is affiliated with.
Satoshi's from Block 78.
Block 3.
Yeah, Block 78.
Oh, from Block 78.
Yeah.
Got it. So Satoshi from Block 78.
It's so another aspect that's pretty cool about Ordinals protocol is it has built into it some collectible rarities, like the the Roadmap Rarity Index for Satoshis, and they're tied to basically understanding Bitcoin and like how Bitcoin works. So some of the
Bitcoin that was traded for the pizza becomes like a rarer sat.
Exactly. So you have different aspects of collectability. Also, artists can use it as part of use that in their art for, like I think people are doing like pizza art using pizza sats. So it's a fun use of Bitcoin into the art. And so we use Block 78 because for our kind of canvas of Satoshis for dimensions. And another thing we did is you can use the Bitcoin blockchain itself for your art, as in the inscription. It's like the art is all the art is not just in the one inscription of the, let's say, whatever you inscribe, but the art is also in the transactions that were used to create the inscription or the collection. So in our case, OCM Dimensions was a 300-piece collection, but we did it in a very special way, and it actually it took over 1,000 Bitcoin transactions to create the collection, and it's that footprint, or you could say kind of the dance of transactions and Satoshis on Bitcoin, the Bitcoin blockchain, kind of a pretty amazing thing to see. But people haven't really seen it yet, and we'll help highlight that in kind of visualizing transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain. So we'll come out with some of these visualizations just so people can appreciate actually the bigger art of OCM Dimensions that really isn't seen yet. And we'll see more people doing things like this too, because it is like the kind of the skill or artistry by people who are manipulating Satoshis around is actually, quite, it's its own art form that it's not appreciated yet, but it will be appreciated too. That's another aspect. There's basically many dimensions of using ordinals and inscriptions for art, but not just for art. But this is one type of art.
So as you talk about these broader applications that are going to be able to be built on top of Bitcoin, are there any in particular that right now you think are most promising, or types of applications that the super decentralization of Bitcoin like really lend themselves to the most? Or again, like I think about the trade-offs are that it's probably more expensive to play a game, so gaming doesn't feel like necessarily the best use case, but I imagine there are other use cases that are better served by Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think the starting point is still art. I think people understand, NFTs and art, but the NFTs and art are like right now, it's more like images, static, JPEGs, basically with recursion and with how Ordinals kind of incentivizes people to code and create generative things. Also, you have because we inscribe things like these code libraries like 3.js and p5.js, we'll see art being created by code. But what's really cool is that these are actually it's not static JPEGs. They're actually applications. They're like OCM Dimensions. They're 3D. They're animated. They're interactive. So I think the interactive part is actually quite significant. So it's not just you're displaying something that was inscribed. You're actually rendering or actually running something that was inscribed. So it's basically you're basically executing or streaming code from the Bitcoin blockchain. You're streaming from a Satoshi, and by going to that model, you're actually basically interacting with an application that's streaming from Bitcoin, and the application can be art, which is kind of first use case for understanding, but it could be games. I think that'll be next. And it could be future things that people can build more complex applications on top of Bitcoin.
So on the art side, though, are there any artists you're particularly excited about or projects that you're excited about on Ordinals right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're focused on building many like both art and applications on top of Bitcoin using kind of techniques that we've been pioneering. So we launched Osora, and Osora is basically our platform to be launching.
it's like a marketplace. Well, right now you don't buy on there, but like you can look at all the OCM dimensions and then it'll link you out to like a Magic Eden to purchase. Is that right?
Well, no, we're launching our things on top of Asura. So basically, what you're talking about with art, with interactive, art or applications or games, these I think interesting. Basically, there's a lot of power to ordinals and ordinal descriptions, and we're going to be creating things that people will value. Basically, high quality digital assets.
And they can buy them on Osura, or they see them on Osura. What is the
So
what role does Osura play?
We launched them, right? Like OCM Dimensions was bought on Osura, right? It's launched.
Got it.
We'll be launching more on Osura.
So it's a primary marketplace. Is it also? I just didn't think I could buy. When I was looking at the dimensions, which I'm priced out of, they're like half a Bitcoin. Maybe they're up from now. I don't know. But the floor ones can you buy them on Osura right now?
No.
No. It's just like the primary mint goes out that way, and then it's on a secondary like Magic Eden.
Yeah, we'll have more news about what we're taking with Osura, but the focus is we're creating high quality OCM assets on on Bitcoin, and the focus is Bitcoin.
So someone asked what the roadmap or utility are for OCM Dimensions. And I sort of didn't even think of that question, because to me, I was like, I assumed it was, again, a digital artifact, and it's this historical moment. But I realized maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not just intended to be this like historical marker. Maybe there is broader roadmap utility y'all are thinking about for it. So curious your answer there.
It is. So how we see the ordinal market going is it's going to be it's a very early market now. It's going to be much bigger and very significant, and it'll be significant because of things like recursion and some of the other things we talked about, and that's what OCM Dimensions pioneered. So as a art piece, as a digital artifact, right, it is quite historic, and it's basically enabling this. Basically, a year from now, a couple years from now, we'll see a huge market for ordinals, and we'll see all these amazing applications, and they're using basically the techniques that we pioneered with OCM Dimensions, and that is what's really special about OCM Dimensions, right? This is kind of the first collection that showed how powerful ordinals is, and highlighted all of these dimensions for Bitcoin ordinals that people don't really get right now, but they'll get a year from now.
Are you all going to do Dimension 2000? I think you did your original, I forget the number you have on this original OCM Dimension collection, but it's quite small. Are you going to do more dimensions?
No, so the OCM Dimensions 300.
300, right.
That's what we launched in June 15th. And it's very special for a number of, actually many dimensions. Right? We talk about recursion. That's, I think, the biggest thing that is has come to Bitcoin in years, and will be the biggest thing, I think, going forward in the next couple of years. We did this reveal, which is kind of the first time also that a collection could be revealed on Bitcoin, right? So that's only possible in these 300, right? That's what's special about OCM Dimensions 300. It was part of this reveal. Also, we did a randomization. It was a fair launch, which is actually really important. So I don't think anyone has done fair launches of collections, on-chain fair launches of collections on Bitcoin, even today. So this was probably I think the first on-chain fair launch where everyone on-chain got a random one of them, right? Like we didn't like off-chain say, okay, you get this one, you get this one. And we actually proved it all on-chain that everyone got basically a fair one randomly. So that's special about these 300. And kind of earlier I was talking about the art of doing transactions on Bitcoin and how it took over 1,000 transactions to create these 300. That art actually hadn't even been seen yet, like showing the transactions and how these 300 were created. So this collection can only be 300 because of all of these properties. Dimensions X, which is the next one on the dimensions, and so the whole thing for dimensions in that. So this goes back to, I guess, the parent-child aspect of collection provenance. So the root parent, we said, well, maximum, like for all time, at the most, create 2,500. But that's just from the ancestor of the parent. The 300 is the unique one that has the project I just mentioned. And then we'll have a 2,000 collection that also have its own unique properties, and that's dimension X. And it's up to 2,000. That's over time. Maybe 2,000 will be created after a number of years, or probably actually it'll be less. It's less than that. But so we'll explain more. We haven't explained all the details of that one, but
do we have a timeline for any of this?
Yeah. So we're working on actually many things, because there's so many things that are possibilities on Bitcoin. So that's what we're quite excited about, the Bitcoin space. But Dimensions X will be its own amazing collection. And we'll announce details in the near future.
Okay, so taking this as a moment to talk about OnChainMonkeys broadly, I think I think y'all describe OCM as a passport to the wealthy digital nation. Amanda, maybe this is a good moment for you to chime in. Would love to kind of hear what that means to y'all and how you would describe just the high level mission of OCM writ large.
Sure. So I always talk about, if you have an OnChainMonkey Genesis or Karma, it's your passport to the wealthy digital nation. And for us, wealth can mean several things. Wealth can be financial wealth. So, you own NFTs, you want them to go up in value, obviously for investment purposes. It can be social connectivity. We've brought our community together for like online poker games with Charlie Lee and Owen Wilson, Woody Harrelson, who are all investors of ours. We've thrown parties on the New York Stock Exchange floor, like a private party for OnChainMonkeys. We've done stuff in a number of different NFTs events where we're kind of bringing our community together to get to know each other, to bond. So social connectivity. And then I'd say the last thing is just around, we've enabled our community to build alongside us. And so, we did create a DAO. We put about $4 million of our Karma Mint revenue into that. And people have gone off and they've started businesses together. They've done creative endeavors. They've done some social impact. And so really we're, the wealthy digital nation is number one, obviously we want to create wealth for our community, but we also want to enable them to live out their dreams, fulfill things that they want to do in their lives. And we've really enabled that in many ways through our OnChainMonkey community.
So I'm curious, one thing that I've asked when I've interviewed the Doodles team or the Yuga team, like I have a sense of what the bigger business models there are for those teams outside of just NFT sales, right? It's becoming the next Disney and making content that way, or being a gaming company. How do you all monetize? And how does that work over time?
I mean, we've launched a number of digital collections. So obviously, there's the Genesis collection, desserts. We did a public Karma Mint. That was a collection done by the Hollywood animation team behind Ice Age, Rio, Ferdinand. We just did this launch of OCM Dimensions. So there, obviously revenue opportunities when we do these mints, which are quite significant. And then, we're also doing some really interesting partnerships, for example, with, Asprey and Bugatti. So Asprey is the jeweler that was founded in 1781, literally did like the furniture for the Titanic. And Bugatti, there's, I think, 1,001 Bugattis available at any time in the world. So one of the most luxurious car brands. They're creating physical eggs, 111, and we are helping to turn those eggs into generative art on Bitcoin. So we also, work with them in a revenue share partnership as well. But I think, from our perspective, it's really just being the leaders in building digital assets and really high quality digital artifacts on Bitcoin. And that's kind of the future. I think we are uniquely positioned just from our team perspective, from the technical innovation we've already kind of delivered on multiple times across different collections through our community. And I'd say, through our art and our artistic team. So yeah, that's what we're really excited about.
I definitely buy that y'all are uniquely positioned to do NFTs as products because you can technically innovate in ways and all of that. Does it make you nervous ever though? Like, NFTs as the primary product in a time when NFTs are like, there's less and less interest in it in this day and age?
It's early days. I mean, you look at NFTs and you look at maybe CryptoKitties 2018 with Dapper Labs, then really like NBA Top Shot kind of bringing it more into the mainstream. NFTs have only been around for 2 years. So you look at like Bitcoin when it was at 100, then 78, then 1,000. I mean, we are in the infancy days of the NFT market in general, and we're even in more baby steps in terms of just the Ordinals protocol having just launched in February. So I think it's normal that, especially with highly innovative technologies, the market's going to go up and down. It's going to be volatile. But what's been really incredible to see, and whenever we look across different sets of data comparing other NFT collections, we've continually kind of shown that we've been the most profitable in trades for our community, and we've kind of kept a relatively a good price on our floor price on our NFTs. And what we believe is that kind of in the heated markets, it's just about marketing and it's kind of about hype. But when it's a slower market, it's actually about quality that shows through and shines. And there's been so many articles and data points on different websites. And I think OnChainMonkey is one of those, collections and companies. We don't really even view ourselves as an NFT collection. We talked briefly earlier, but we've raised a $5 million seed back in December. We have the founders of YGG, Axie Infinity, Dapper Labs, Owen Wilson, Woody Harrelson, Holly Branson of Virgin Unite, incredible group of kind of Web3 crypto and impact executives that are behind us. So we're like a fully funded company, right? We're not just kind of an NFT collection. We've been docs from day one, and we're building, and it's a great time to build. And it's really early days in the market, so I think it's normal to kind of see these market fluctuations. But we believe that quality stands out over time.
I do find the idea interesting that you mentioned earlier that like it's Ethereum NFT people who are going over to Bitcoin, going over to Ordinals, and they may come back to Ethereum and start to actually value the on-chain NFTs on Ethereum more. Like I had Jimmy.eth on the podcast probably a year and a half ago at this point, pleading his case for why on-chain people should really care about on-chain and Ethereum. So I'm fairly bought into that, and broadly speaking, I agree with that. It's just been interesting to me to see the general consumer maybe not caring that much at the end of the day.
We're creating multi-generational NFTs, or we're building for the next generation and generate after that. And the things we build stand the test of time. And it's, the world is going digital. Digital assets are going to be a bigger and bigger part of the future generation. And we're basically creating these digital assets that are very significant. Even Karma, for most people who understand Karma now, it looks like, oh, it's another PFP with kind of cool looking art. But we actually did it in a way that actually is also very unique and kind of shows kind of quality and care that went to it. It took nearly a year of work to create the Karma collection, because it was generated, the whole collection was generated on chain. So people don't understand what even that means. As in, we didn't handpick certain Karma traits to create. The actual distribution of all the traits was created on chain, on Ethereum. Because it's done that way, it's actually very hard to make a collection, a generative collection, look as good as it does, because you can't basically handpick or pick and choose different type of traits. So that's one aspect of the quality that goes into any of our OCM works.
A couple final questions that we got on Twitter when I mentioned I was interviewing y'all. One that came up in various forums a couple times was, first, like any plan to make bananas a blockchain-based token, and then more specifically, will banana be released as a BRC20 token on Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, bananas are OnChainMonkey currency. So, we're working to basically, decentralize many things in our ecosystem. And that's something that, we've been working towards.
So is that a yes? Is it going to be a BRC20?
Yeah, I mean, our goal is to, basically use the best technology to create the most value, for our ecosystem. So BRC20 is a very early part of Ordinals. So we'll see where that goes.
Okay, I'll accept that. And then somebody asked, I think you guys had done a a collaboration with Alexis, André, and folks were wondering what the status of that collaboration is.
Yeah, it's going quite well. He's been working on the generative collection that we're going to be launching on Bitcoin Ordinals.
Okay, final question. What would be your recommendation for folks looking to get started who want to dive into the Ordinals ecosystem? Where should they look?
Yeah, I think actually it's the first thing is really learn something about Bitcoin, or rather, try to learn as much as you can about Bitcoin, I can put it that way. And the kind of building blocks of Bitcoin, actually, like Bitcoin is really great because it actually is simple design. It's much simpler than Ethereum, actually. So there's the Bitcoin white paper. It's 8 pages. It doesn't take that long to read, although it takes a long time to understand it. And I recommend that. I'm going to be doing some educational content on just what is Bitcoin, how do you understand, Bitcoin transaction. In the coming weeks, I'll put out some of that content to really help people understand Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is quite significant. And the reason Bitcoin Ordinals will be significant on Bitcoin is really because of Bitcoin. So understanding Bitcoin is kind of the first step, really, to appreciate, this market and the bigger market too. Even if you don't care about Ordinals, actually understand Bitcoin. I think it is something that can add value to you.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for joining. Excited to continue to watch this journey. I'm sure we'll speak again at some point here as you continue to build out everything, and just grateful for y'all making the time.
Yeah,
Great.
Thank you so much for having us. We'd love to keep updating you as things are changing a lot in our world.
Totally.
So there's a few things that are coming out that we haven't announced yet. So we wanted to kind of give ourselves the wiggle room, but in case it came out Wednesday or the following, that our stuff has been publicly announced. So there's more coming.
Awesome. Well, folks will be paying attention, I'm sure. Thank you both.
Thanks, Carly.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.